The box sat on the kitchen table for 3 days before anyone touched it. Daniel had wrapped it himself, careful folds, a thin white ribbon, the kind his late wife Margaret used to favor. He'd bought the necklace 6 months ago, before everything fell apart, before his daughter Claire had looked him in the eye at Thanksgiving dinner and said the words that had hollowed him out like a winter wind through an empty house. "You don't deserve a gift. You never did." He hadn't argued. He never did anymore. Daniel Mercer was 61 years old, a retired high school history teacher with calloused hands, a bad knee, and a habit of getting up before sunrise to make coffee he'd drink alone on the back porch. He had a modest savings account, a house that needed a new roof, and one daughter, Claire, 34, brilliant, sharp-tongued and furious at him in a way he didn't fully understand and hadn't for years. It had started after Margaret died. Or maybe it had started before that, and the grief had simply stripped away the politeness that kept the fracture invisible. Either way, by the time Daniel found his footing again after losing his wife of 32 years, Claire had already constructed a version of him that he didn't recognize: cold, absent, selfish. And she defended that version with the ferocity of someone who needed it to be true. He understood on some level that grief did this to people, made them need someone to blame. And he had not been a perfect father. He'd worked too much in Claire's childhood, missed recitals and school plays and birthday parties because he was coaching the academic decathlon or grading papers late into the night. He'd carried his own father's emotional silence like an inheritance he hadn't known how to refuse. There were things he should have said, moments he should have stayed, but he had also driven her to every single swim meet for 6 years. He had read to her every night until she was 11 and declared herself too old for it. He had sat beside her hospital bed for 4 days straight when she had her appendix out at age 9, sleeping in a chair that left a crick in his neck for a week. He had loved her, imperfectly, quietly, in the way he'd been taught to love, which was through presence and labor rather than words. None of that seemed to count anymore. He'd found the necklace at an estate sale in October. A delicate gold chain with a small oval pendant. Inside it, under a tiny glass panel, was a pressed violet. Margaret had grown violets in their backyard every spring. She'd pressed them in books, tucked them into birthday cards, left them on Daniel's pillow on their anniversary. It had been her quiet language of love. When Daniel saw the necklace, he'd stood still in the middle of that cluttered estate sale table for a full 2 minutes. The woman running the table had asked him twice if he was all right. He bought it for $40. He had it cleaned and reclasped. He wrapped it in tissue paper and put it in a small white box with a ribbon and wrote Claire's name on the card in his careful, teacher's handwriting. He didn't write anything inside the card. He didn't know what to say that she would believe. Claire came to his house on a Sunday in December, not warmly but dutifully. She still came, which Daniel held onto like a lifeline, even when the visits felt like endurance tests. She came with her husband Marcus and their 5-year-old son Eli, who was the one unblemished joy in Daniel's life, a boy who climbed into his grandfather's lap without hesitation and called him Papa Dan in a voice like a bell. Eli spotted the box immediately. "What's that, Papa Dan?" "A gift," Daniel said. "For your mama." Claire had been hanging up her coat. She turned slowly. Her eyes moved from Daniel to the box and back, and something passed over her face, not softness, not yet, but a flicker of something unreadable. "You didn't have to do that," she said. Her voice was careful, controlled. "I wanted to." She picked up the box, turned it over once in her hands. Then she set it back down and looked at him with those eyes, Margaret's eyes, sharp and green, and said quietly but with an edge that cut, "Dad, I don't need anything from you." "I know," he said. "I mean it." A pause. "You don't have to buy my forgiveness." Something moved in his chest. He kept his voice even. "I'm not trying to." "Then what is this?" She gestured at the box. "What are you doing?" "Giving you a gift," he said simply. "Because it's Christmas, and because I thought you'd like it." She stared at him. "You thought I'd like it," she repeated, and the contempt was thin but present, the way ice is thin over a deep lake. "After everything, after how you were, you just wrapped something up and thought that was enough." "I didn't say it was enough. You don't deserve to give me gifts." Her voice cracked slightly on the word deserve. "You lost that years ago. You weren't there, Dad. You were never there." Marcus had taken Eli into the living room. They were alone now, the two of them, in the kitchen with the white box between them like a small, fragile island. Daniel was quiet for a moment. He had learned late in life, too late maybe, that his instinct to defend himself was often the wrong instinct. He breathed instead. He thought about Margaret, who had known how to wait out a storm without flinching. "Right," he said finally. "I wasn't there enough, I know that, I've known it for a long time. And I'm sorry, not for the first time, I know, and maybe you don't believe it anymore, but I am." Claire said nothing. Her jaw was tight. "Open it," he said. "Not because it changes anything, just open it." She stared at him for another long moment. Then, with the stiff movements of someone doing something against their better judgment, she picked up the box and pulled the ribbon loose. The tissue paper fell open. Claire went very still. She lifted the necklace out slowly, the gold chain pooling in her palm, the small pendant catching the winter light from the kitchen window. She turned it over. She saw the violet inside the glass. The sound she made was almost nothing, a small exhale, barely audible. But Daniel had been her father for 34 years. He heard it. "Where did you get this?" Her voice had changed. The hard edge was still there, but something underneath had shifted. "Estate sale back in October." "October," she looked up. "You've had this since October. I wasn't sure you'd accept it. I almost didn't bring it out." She looked back down at the pendant. Her thumb moved over the glass, over the tiny pressed violet inside. "She grew these," Claire said softly. "Mom, every spring, yes. She used to put them in my lunchbox." A pause. "On hard days, when I had a test or a presentation, she'd just slip one in. I'd find it at lunch." Her voice had gone quiet and young in a way it hadn't been in years. "I forgot about that." Daniel said nothing. He let her have the memory. Claire's hand closed around the necklace. She pressed her fist against her mouth briefly, something she'd done since she was a little girl when she was trying not to cry. She'd always been too proud to cry easily, even as a child. "Miss her," she said, small, almost whispered. "I know," Daniel said. "I do too, every day." What came after was not a reconciliation, not exactly, not the movie version of one, not tears and embraces and all sins absolved. It was quieter than that, more real. Claire put the necklace on. She stood at the kitchen sink and clasped it herself, and Daniel watched without moving, the way you watch something delicate happen and know that any movement might disturb it. She turned around. The pendant rested at the hollow of her throat. She looked like Margaret standing like that, and the resemblance hit Daniel somewhere behind his sternum. "Thank you," she said. The words were stiff, as if they cost her something, but they were real. "Welcome," he said. Eli came barreling back into the kitchen a moment later, crashing into Claire's legs and demanding hot chocolate. The spell broke. Marcus followed behind, and the afternoon shifted into something ordinary, coats and mugs, and Eli narrating a story about his kindergarten friend who could burp the alphabet. But something had changed. Something small and fragile and important. At one point, helping Eli with his hot chocolate, Claire stood close enough to Daniel that their shoulders almost touched. She didn't move away. It was nothing. It was everything. That night after they left, Daniel sat on the back porch with his coffee and looked at the yard where Margaret's violets grew in warmer months, bare earth now, brown and sleeping under the December cold. He could see their bedroom window reflected in the dark glass of the sliding door, the lamp he still left on out of habit on her side of the bed. He was not a man given to speeches or grand gestures. He never had been. He had loved badly in some ways and well in others, and he was old enough now to sit with that without needing it to resolve cleanly into either verdict. But he thought about Claire, the way she'd gone still when she saw the violet, the way her voice had gone young, the way she'd put the necklace on, not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever fully, but a door, he thought. A door left slightly open. He could work with that. He had time. And for the first time in 3 years, he felt like using it. He set down his coffee. He went inside. He turned off Margaret's lamp for the first time in 3 years and went asleep. In the morning, he would call Claire. He wouldn't say anything important. He'd just call, the way fathers are supposed to, the ordinary way, and ask how Eli was doing and whether Marcus's knee was better and whether she wanted to come for dinner sometime soon. And she might say yes. And she might say maybe. And either way, he would show up, the way he should have always shown up, quietly, steadily, with nothing to prove and nothing to buy, just present. Finally, simply present.